Good morning. Just want to make a few comments and answer a couple of questions before we get started today. What we saw yesterday were the most incredible arguments born of desperation. Arguments that, if the senators ever followed, would lead this country down the most destructive path. Yesterday, the president's defenders argued that a president of the United States could do essentially whatever he wanted to secure his reelection, no matter how corrupt, if he believed that his reelection was in the national interest. As the president's lawyers argued, if the president does a quid pro quo, even one where he withholds at war, even if he takes actions that jeopardize our national security and the integrity of our elections, as long as he thinks it's in his reelection interest, that's okay, and there's nothing that Congress can do about it. And what's more, if part of that quid pro quo involves an investigation of his political rival, the fact that his political rival is running for president gives it greater legitimacy, not less, because it would be more consequential. That is the most absurdly dangerous argument that could have been made. And the fact that they must resort to this level of desperation is the result of the fact that the House managers proved the defendant's scheme involved withholding of military aid, withholding of a coveted White House meeting with the president of Ukraine in order to coerce, to extort, to blackmail that country into conducting or announcing these sham investigations, to helping him cheat in the election. They went on to say that soliciting, inviting, coordinating foreign assistance in a U.S. election, notwithstanding what the FBI director says or any self-respecting American says, that they view that as perfectly fine. It is the normalization of lawlessness. But that is what they've had to resort to as the evidence has continued to pile up of the president's guilt. And when that evidence threatened to get even greater, with the testimony of John Bolton, they have gone to extraordinary lengths to put a muzzle on John Bolton, to avoid calling him as a witness, to avoid letting the American people hear what he has to say, to trying to stifle his book, to attacking him publicly, because they fear what he has to say, because they already know the president's scheme has been exposed. So that's where they are. We will continue today to make the case, a case that has already been made to the American people, but needs to be made to this Senate, and that is a fair trial requires witnesses. Fair trial, an impartial oath requires witnesses. And that's what they should deliver for the American people. No trial, no vindication. No vindication for the president or anyone else. The Constitution requires a fair trial, and that's all we're asking. Happy to respond to a couple questions.
Paul is teasing a 1 o'clock question he's going to ask regarding potentially the whistleblower involving their name. Do you have any thoughts on the appropriateness of that and what should be done perhaps by the Chief Justice?
Well, as I said yesterday, we protect whistleblowers. We need their cooperation, we need their support in making the country work. And I'm not talking specifically about this whistleblower, I'm talking about whistleblowers generally. We rely on people of good conscience to report misconduct. The only point in outing this whistleblower is to satisfy the desire of the president for retribution, and that is not something that this Senate should condone.
Some Republicans are pointing to the Steele dossier and defending Philbin's comments last night. Is that legitimate, saying that Hillary Clinton and the DNC were involved in the Steele dossier, pointing back to?
You know, honestly, going down the Steele dossier rabbit hole, I don't even understand what the logical connection is supposed to be. The president is on trial right now for withholding military aid from an ally at war, trying to coerce that ally into helping him cheat in the next election, and to continue, and I may gratify the president, again, part of what the president's lawyers are doing isn't meant to persuade the senators, it's not meant to persuade the American people, and it isn't. It's meant to gratify the grievances of the president by talking about Christopher Steele or James Comey or Peter Strzok or Lisa Page. None of those people are responsible for the president's misconduct. Only Donald Trump is responsible for his misconduct, and he must be held to account. Thank you.
Will you still pursue John Bolton if tomorrow's vote fails?
Back to those who were, most of you not being here at 11 o'clock last night, other than Mike Shear.
I was here.
At least a few.
I think more of us were here than you realize.
You all kind of blend together, is that what you're saying?
Did you end up talking to Chairman Burr, because he said he didn't see any problem with Philbin's comments?
Let me just make my opening comments. Two things happened yesterday that, even in the realm of current politics, were pretty stunning. We had the president's lawyer say a president, as long as they feel like they're acting in their own interest on re-election, can virtually do anything. Then we had the president's other attorney say, as long as it doesn't meet the criteria of a political contribution from Bill Barr's Justice Department, foreign interference is fine. I think those are both wrong. I think they dramatically weaken Americans' expectation that we're going to have a free and fair election. I think it contradicts the work of the Director of National Intelligence, the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI. I think it undermines their work because what they are trying to prevent is, whether it be deep fakes, whether it be Russian bot manipulation or social media postings, whether it be weaponizing hacked information into the political dialogue. You know, they're out there day in and day out. They've all said this is their top priority. And in a sense, the president's lawyers are saying all this is fine in the Donald Trump view of America and the Donald Trump view of the importance of protecting our election security. My hope is that my Republican colleagues, those of us, both sides of the aisle, who've been relentless on trying to make sure that we stood up the appropriate protections for election security, will speak out. I'll leave it for them to make their own decisions on that. But you know, I thought those two arguments, fairly calm most of the time, but they really set me off, because it really dramatically reverses what we, the intelligence community, and the law enforcement community have been working on for 3 years.
Senator, some of your Republican colleagues this morning were defending Mr. Philbin's argument by saying all he was saying was that it wasn't a crime to do that. What do you make of that argument?
If it's not a crime to interfere in our elections, if it's okay for Russia to manipulate videos with deep fakes, if it's okay to see a repeat of the kind of social media based attack on our election in 2020, and when we see our adversaries, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, getting better, God help us.
Senator, what do you think will happen with this witness vote tomorrow?
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know, if I hope we'll still get the votes to hear the witness. I've not heard any argument about why this process wouldn't improve if you hear from John Bolton. Even if it's not going to convince you on impeachment, shouldn't the American public have all of the facts? Shouldn't we as policymakers have all of the facts, so that if we choose to act after the fact, regardless of what happens on impeachment, if we choose to make clearer that foreign interference is inappropriate, that, in a sense, asking a foreign leader for help in a political campaign is inappropriate? Shouldn't we have all of those facts if we're going to try to make policy on a going forward basis? Because even if people vote not to move forward on the impeachment, and I haven't made my final decision until we finish this process, I would think, particularly based upon the president's lawyers' arguments yesterday, that anyone that wants to protect our election integrity, or anyone who wants to basically not invite more foreign interference, or not basically say all bets are off when it comes to campaigns, if you're a president, you can do anything, we'll have to come in and correct that, and we would do a better job at correcting that if we have all the facts.
Senator, many of your Republican colleagues are saying if the witness vote fails tomorrow, they're going to move quickly to a final vote on the verdict, no closing arguments, no deliberations among the senators. What's your reaction to that, that's what they're contemplating?
What we heard at the beginning of this was, let's follow the Clinton process. The Clinton process went through where witnesses were brought forward after the arguments and question period took place. So if we get rid of that, so much for the Clinton process. After that, senators had a chance to actually talk to each other and deliberate. If we get rid of that as well, I think in rush to judgment without any debate amongst senators, I think it'll say to the American public, this whole thing was a sham.
Have you been talking to any Republicans about voting for witnesses?
Listen, I've been talking to my Republican colleagues on a regular basis. Again, people have said this before. I think former Republican senators have said this before. If this was a secret vote, we'd absolutely have a full set of witnesses.
Has there been any talk among your colleagues about possibly censuring the president instead?
Listen, there's lots of ideas floating around. Let's take this one step at a time. I still think there is a need and a desire from the vast majority of Americans, whether they support the president or don't support the president, that we ought to hear from folks who are in the room. And if the president says, well, he's going to attack now John Bolton, 40 years of being an extraordinarily conservative expert in foreign policy, somebody who I mostly disagreed with for most of his 40-year career, if he wants to throw him under the bus now, let the president bring forward Mick Mulvaney, his chief of staff. He was in the room as well. This fear of having more facts, I think a lot of the public can draw their own conclusions from that. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Warren.
So I think that what we're seeing is disclosures dropping like dominoes. These disclosures are going to continue. I think there are really still open questions about the national security review by the White House on the Bolton book and what additional disclosures we're going to see from them. But let me say about this proposed disclosure of the whistleblower's name, I think that kind of irresponsible and reprehensible action should be sanctioned by the Senate. If any of our members disclose the name of a whistleblower, I think there's strong bipartisan support for preserving confidentiality of whistleblowers. Both Senator Grassley and myself and others on both sides of the aisle have really made a career's work of using whistleblower information and protecting the identity of whistleblowers. And nothing could be more abhorrent to an investigation of wrongdoing at the highest levels than disclosing a whistleblower's name. So I hope the Chief Justice will refuse to provide any question that gives any information about the identity of a whistleblower, and I hope the Senate will take immediate action against any senator who discloses it.
On the Chief Justice, how do you understand his role in breaking a 50-50 tie, should there be one?
There's precedent for the Chief Justice breaking a tie, and there's a powerful argument for the Chief Justice allowing witnesses and documents to assure the credibility and trust in this proceeding. But it is the senators who will make a final judgment. And the weight of responsibility is on my Republican colleagues' shoulders. They have to step up and stand up to this president. So make no mistake, the Chief Justice is not going to provide them with some escape hatch here. They have the responsibility.
Senator Rand Paul is using a 1 o'clock question regarding the whistleblower. He says that the Chief Justice has not screened his question and it's coming. If he names the whistleblower, what penalty do you think is appropriate?
I think there are potential ethics rules, penalties in the Senate for this kind of irresponsible and reprehensible disclosure of whistleblower information, even if it's not their name. Disclosure of this information is abhorrent to the ethics and traditions and institution of the Senate, and I think should be subject to some kind of sanction.
Thanks, Senator Blumenthal. files determine. Frank Jr., Bob.
We're gonna go through the wooden double doors on the other side of
Michael, you just recorded the whole walk on video. You go tell them not to? You just recorded the whole thing?
I know. Matt Laszlo did it yesterday.